When we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, we've no less days to sing God's praise than when we first begun. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I was lost, but now I am found. I was blind, but now I see.
Discovered a lump in her breast, her first thought was, I cannot believe God is finished with me already. She still had so much to do. After all, 2 weeks earlier, she had just opened her RE/MAX Experts office in Lakeland, Florida, after 25 years in real estate, the last 12 with RE/MAX. And she was scheduled to be on a panel of team leader experts at the 2008 RE/MAX convention just weeks away. So, she put her faith in God and her trust in the doctors and underwent surgery. Then hopped on a plane for a convention in Las Vegas with 7 associates. Little did she know God wasn't done with her yet. She was about to become a self-described poster child for women's cancer. Only a year and a half after discovering a lump in her breast, her doctors told her she had stage 4 ovarian cancer. This time, her thought was, I really am going to die. How can my life be almost over? But that notion was short-lived. Her faith in God stronger than that of her fear of cancer. There are still so many things on her bucket list she wants to do, not the least of which is to someday be blessed with grandchildren. And she knew, deep down, this was just another test. A test she was ready to ace. And ace it she has. But not alone. Jan is blessed with an amazing support team, both at work and at home. She enjoys traveling with her 2 sons and husband and spending time with a large and supportive extended family. And coming to the office is not only gratifying, but fun. Her team has been recognized as a leader in sales in Central Florida for over 10 years, and she couldn't ask for a better support cast of associates and staff. Jan had her last chemo session a week ago today, and not only is her business thriving, but Jan's thriving too. Having cancer twice in the last 2 years has been a doubly humbling experience, she says. Knowing how many family, friends, friends of friends, and strangers cared about me and are praying for my survival and donating their time and money to find a cure. Life is definitely good for Jan Bellamy, she says. And just think of all the money I'm saving on hair care.
Hi, I am Marcia. I am Jan's sister, her only sister, and I'm proud to be her sister. As I was thinking about what to share, I was thinking back on some early memories. The earliest memory I have is that Jan and I actually were very different. She was a slob. She was very messy. And unfortunately, we had to share a room. And so at one point, I drew a chalk line down the middle of the room, and I said, you stay on that side, I stay on this side with all my things meticulously placed in their proper order, and her side looking like a tornado had come through it. I'm not sure how we divided the door, but anyway, it worked until we finally got our own rooms. Another memory I have is when we were in high school, we rode the bus. Well, I'm there at the bus stop in Massachusetts in the freezing cold weather. This is before girls wore pants to school, in a dress, freezing myself, waiting for the bus at least 5 or 10 minutes ahead of time. Bus comes, where's Jan? And I was so humiliated. I had to ask the bus driver, please wait for my sister, because I knew my dad had already gone to work and it would be a big problem. Here she comes flying up the hill, half dressed, hair in the breeze, and that was just Jan. And no thanks or nothing. But anyway, Jan knew how to make me mad. She would say, Marcia Elaine the scatterbrain. Now, I asked myself, who was really the scatterbrained one? It was not me, it was Jan. But that would make me mad. So, as you know, I'm the oldest, and Jan seemed to want to follow in my footsteps for some strange reason. I don't know why. So I was a server at the Officers Club on base, and as soon as she turned 15, she was a server at the Officers Club on base, and we had some wild and crazy stories that are not for consumption by our parents or anybody else at that time. Well, then I go into education in college, and she decides that she's going to get a degree in education and become a teacher. That just was never going to work from the beginning, and you all know that. She finally found her niche as a realtor, and then when she was at the height of doing very well and being very successful, I was visiting her in Lakeland one time, and she goes, Marcia, don't you want to come work for me? I'm like, no. I see how you're 24/7 on the phone, and Steve yells from the other room, good decision, Marcia. But anyway, I'm glad I found what I do best when teaching, and she found her destiny in the Lord in real estate. And what I remember about Jan is she was so adventuresome. She always loved to travel. And I think that was because my dad being in the Air Force and us living in England and getting to travel all over Europe, 30 days in the little camper and the tent with only the ground is the floor and stuff. And so Jan and Steve and the boys came and visited us in South Africa, and we got to do all kind of wild and crazy things. Philip and Jan and Michelle weren't old enough, so they got to go whitewater rafting. We had to ride the horses. But we did a river safari on the Zambezi River, and she was just always up for fun. We went to England. I've been with her to Hawaii, of course, taken cruises in the Caribbean, and whenever there was any trips offered, she was always eager to go. And then one time, it was a last-minute trip. It was about two or 3 years ago. It was a last-minute trip. Michelle and I were going to take a Mediterranean cruise. And I was just scrolling through looking at the pictures of the room, and I noticed it said, Sleeps 3. And I thought, Sleeps 3? So I was thinking through it, and I know how much Jan likes to travel, and she was taking chemo and everything at the time. And so, as I do, I processed through it all. I thought through it all very carefully, and even called Michelle and said, Michelle, do you mind sleeping on the pull-down bed? Because I knew that she would be on the pull-down bed, not Jan or me. And I called Jan, and she goes, sure, when do we leave? And man, she was all over that trip, and we had a great time. I'm sure Michelle would testify to the memories we had. But this thing is she was in between chemo treatments. So it was like she gets chemo, then we go on this 12-day cruise, and then she's got to go back and get chemo. But she was a real trooper. She hung in there and walked long distances with us, and that was a memory that I'll remember for a long time. Jan was also very generous. When I was in Namibia at Liberty Heritage Christian School, Jan wanted to give some money because they were and still are building the new school. And so she gave a donation, and the donation ended up being 65,000 Namibian dollars. Now, it wasn't American dollars. I don't want you to say 65,000 Namibian dollars, and everybody was like, ooh, who is this? So then later, of course, when I went back to Namibia, I was like a hero because it was my sister that had given 65,000 Namibian dollars to help build the school. And so I told them, yeah, we're going to have to call these classrooms the Bellamy classroom, and maybe one day it'll even become the Bellamy School of Excellence. But she was always, so generous and with giving to other people. Another thing I noticed about her is she was always so positive. Even when she was laying in the bed there, she always wanted to try to help me get out of the bed, and she was always so positive and fighting a good fight. And then I didn't know, Clemmy told me yesterday that, I was accused of being a hoverer. Marcia, stop hovering, because that's just what I didn't know what to do. I was hovering, And so she told Clemmy, send Marcia to the store and let's get out of here. And so I'm like, I can just see them, Clemmy and her, because I had the car. I would have had the car, but Clemmy and her, in the scooter going down the road, But that's just what she wanted to do. She never wanted to give up. And the verse I want to read that just reminds me of her life is in 2 Timothy 4:7-8. You know this one. I have fought the good fight. I have finished the course. I have kept the faith. In the future there is laid up for me the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will award to me on that day. And not only to me, but also to all who have loved his appearing. And when I had seen her Bible, that was underlined, highlighted in her Bible. And I know that was an important verse to her, and that kind of symbolizes what she did. She did fight the good fight. She did, she did things that were proactive and to live for many years after she was diagnosed. And her life was such a testimony to the Lord. We were just blessed, those of us that were there. All these people that came to visit her, all of you that came and visit her, just as a testimony to the Lord, and of what Jan meant to your life. One day she said, I'm glad I'm saved and I'm going to heaven. And Steve will have a lot to say to me when I get there. And I was thinking he probably was going to say, what took you so long? But I'm glad she's there with him now, and I'm glad we have that confidence. And we don't, yes, we're sad to miss her, and I'll be sad and probably cry later on sometime when no one's looking. But anyway, but we know she's rejoicing and dancing in heaven, and that's very important. And I want to kind of conclude with a couple of sayings that Jan had. Sometimes when I would call her, and challenges with teaching students, and I would share some, all of a sudden she was saying, here, let me tell you what to do. Well, as a big sister, I didn't really want to hear that. That's not why I was just trying to vent. Here, let me tell you what to do. And I even heard her say that to someone who came to the house one day since I've been there. Here, let me tell you what to do. 1, 2, 3. She was outlining everything. And I think she did that to some of you, and maybe it was a good thing, because I know she encouraged a lot of people to be successful in businesses and different things, and so maybe you received it better than I did. Her second favorite saying is when I retired from teaching. I didn't really retire, then I went to Namibia to teach. But she said, Marcia, you have to reinvent yourself. And I'm like, what? Reinvent myself? What's wrong with the way I am now? But that's, I think she did that periodically in her life herself. She's like, you have to reinvent yourself now. I go, okay, And I know that that's what she would say to all of us now, without, Jan will leave a void in our lives without being here physically, but we'll have to reinvent ourselves in our lives without her, and hopefully it will be much, much better. And I think I'm going to start crying if I don't stop there. So, Jan, we love you. I'm proud of her as a sister, and I was glad I was able to be here at the end.